Thank you. Happy birthday. I would just like to open with one thing that's happened just post this report, which is the new directors coming on board. So they've hit the ground running and we're getting great value from them already. There's the refreshed ED strategy and destination management plan, which is coming to fruition at the moment. So we expect to see that completed in the next couple of months. The general work program is on track, and as are the financials as well. So that's general overview, and I'll hand over to Nigel from an operational perspective, including some of the challenges we're facing as a district as well.
Morning, everybody. Yeah, look, first quarter of the year, we come off the back of a Christmas period a bit quieter, obviously, from business and industry, but what has been noticeable, and it's noticeable right across the country, is that the 12 months or so post-lockdown, consumer spend, visitor spend was tracking ahead of previous years, and basically 1st of January, it's reversed a wee bit, probably across the board. We're anywhere between up to 5%, 6% down on a consumer spend right across our district than what we were the year previous, and that's been replicated across the country as well. Talking to a lot of our food producers and manufacturers, notwithstanding the challenges of getting their finished product to the market, which I'll talk about shortly, the demand has been strong, but that's come off the back end a wee bit as well. So workforce continues to be our largest challenge, and it's only getting worse, attracting, retaining the skilled workforce that we need, and that's basically right across the country as well. So very challenging with some of the immigration settings as well. But that big one around supply chain is probably the second largest one, or basically right alongside the workforce. We produce enough food and beverage for 40 odd million people here. We've got plenty of supply, we've got plenty of ability to process it, and we've got plenty of demand, both nationally and globally. But our issue at the moment is that inconsistent supply of containers. Speaking with one of our largest food processors here, they lost 12 days of production last month, or the month of May, as a result of effectively producing it, and it's just fallen off the end of the production line because it's got nowhere to go. So cold storage is full, dry or food appropriate dry storage full as well, and 1 week needing 100 containers and getting 20, the next week needing 100 and getting 200, the next week needing 100 and getting none. So the double-edged whammy with that as well is that those containers not coming into the country also means that a lot of them have large R&M and CapEx planned through their off seasons, and they're struggling to get the componentry into the country or the machinery in to do those as well. So when you look at all of that, the impacts will, there will unlikely be some impacts across into the level of staffing or the number of hours and some of those big employees as well. So by far and away, that's our biggest two challenges at the moment. But in the good news side of things, the government has announced a second round of the Strategic Asset Protection Program funding. So we're due to get 700,000 in relation to that. We'll be coming out to, I think the Mayor's got an appointment tomorrow with our visitor staff, as well as we'll be coming out onto the community boards through into the tourism and visitor sector around some of the priorities in which to direct that funding at. So you'll be hearing from us very shortly in that regard. Again, it won't be the time frames aren't as tight as they were last time. So that's about it. I'm happy to take any questions, or Mark and I are happy to take any questions. Yeah, it's basically done and dusted. We've been seen as a bit of an exemplar. We got 100 new apprenticeships out the door in less than 5 months. We are hitting the government up for Regional Apprenticeship Initiative number 2. We've probably got about 20 on the waiting list. We were hopeful of some of that more targeted funding out of government in the budget. That it's very worthwhile to local businesses, given them the opportunity or the comfort to take on some apprenticeships. It's fair to say locally here through Mid-South Canterbury, North Otago, 90% of them have actually been in the construction sector. So across the builders, the Sparkies and that as well. And a good range as well. A lot of young ladies coming into the trades too, which is great. But yeah, it's the collective worth over the next sort of 2 to 3 years of 4 million, that's close to 15 million of benefit, multiplier effect through into our local economies, which is great.
Bringing people in as well, or is it just local?
No, there's a number, I couldn't quote you off the top of my head, but there are a number that have been attracted to roles here from other parts of the country. There's some examples of some coming out of Northland. And a wee bit further afield as well. But again, when you look especially at that construction sector, you've got the big Dunedin hospital redevelopment coming on stream. You've got some of the stuff finishing off in Christchurch. So, I think having a flexible and transferable workforce going forward is going to be pretty critical, not just for us, but other parts of the country. So.
Yeah, that's been a fantastic success. Hopefully, if you get some new funding, they won't take more from our roading budget. 2 questions. First, the 700K for the stat funding, we did discuss this last week. Is there any risk, do you see, in not receiving that? No, pretty confident.
The government have set the criteria, which I supplied through to council. And it's very clear that we would meet the second criteria based on what the request has been. So
that increased investment by us is warranted, yeah. Cool. And then second question, and this is sort of ties to GDP, but also our roading network. And just are we confident that the likes the Infometrics data is consistent around what the powerhouse of South Canterbury delivers as far as GDP? I mean, if you look at the likes of Factory Road, and are the measurements correct and to tell the correct story for us, because we've just had reduction in funding, but then we're supporting roads such as Factory Road to keep it to a standard.
I think it can be better. We've got Infometrics down here next month. I think they're in here with us all. So it's an opportunity for us to clarify and dig a bit deeper in relation to that. But I think Councillor Booth on our board has had some discussions specifically on that point as well.
The question's been asked, particularly in regards to the economic development strategy, making sure that the numbers underpinning that are robust. So there's questions around where the numbers have been counted, particularly around the national ones.
Yeah,
so that's delving into that, and the consultant who's doing the work works with Infometrics, so they're
and others, and I think it's just making sure that information is robust in the integrity of it, and it's consistent as well. And I think the challenge, and this has been one of the discussions we've had around the board table, is that the Fonterras or those large food processors of this world, their production at district level, how and where that GDP contribution is accounted for.
So we've identified that question. We can't give a firm answer at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yep.
Further to that, we're obviously not being represented or not shown to be represented correctly, but it all depends on how they base their formula and GDP and what that actually means. And where that number is recorded. But really it should be recorded in where the region that is actually that value is added, and it's very clear in my mind where it is being added, and that's here, and therefore we are well unrepresented in that GDP number, in my opinion.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. In part of the report there, I read about coastal shipping and things like that, which is, you touched on it about getting goods out of our district. In what way can council? I mean, we're not going to go and buy a ship, I know, but I mean, it's pretty important that we as a council get some knowledge or that we can somehow contribute or help and move this idea that is about coastal shipping, because I think it's an important link for our whole country. And if we want to get our port to keep moving forward, I think it's just a thing that we need to have some more discussions on.
And look, you're right, Councillor O'Reilly, it's hugely important, and it's been bounced around for a number of years now.
Yes.
I think now more than ever is the right time for us to actually, and I say us, and I'm talking probably provincial New Zealand, to put a line in the sand around this and get those right parties around the table. So I do know Mayor Bowen mentioned to me that the Minister of Transport is pulling together a paper finally around the opportunities and issues associated with it. And we've put a hand up to say that we'd like to be part of that, as in we, being the district, to help inform right from the coalface around that. So, look, at the end of the day, if the government is serious about, carbon reduction, utilising the Blue Highway is a huge, huge opportunity, and one that should be taken and needs to be taken, especially from an area like ourselves, a provincial port. I think one of the key things that council can do, other than, there's obviously the ownership through Prime Port and the relationships with Tauranga, but it's also to potentially open the way for some of the discussions with your counterparts, just as we are in an EDA or economic development perspective around the country that are in a similar situation to us, around, that group of the willing working together. So that's one opportunity, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, that's fine.
My question is, excuse me, in light of what's just happened, obviously, we know that it was a big flood and all the rest of it, but it's happened twice in the last 18 months regarding being cut off from the north. Are we talking to the big food distributors like Foodstuffs and Progressive of going forward of that, if we were to get cut off for longer than the 3 days or a week, should they be actually starting to consider this side of the river, or are we having those conversations?
Haven't had any direct with them, but I do know Foodstuffs have basically supplied us out of their Dunedin warehouse. But I think it actually goes a bit further than that as well, around not only them looking at their distribution locations, but when you look at some of the produce that was missing off our supermarkets around the veggies and all those sorts of things. So one of the opportunities we're looking at the moment with one of our new board members who's big in the horticultural scene is looking at some of the opportunities that we have locally here in the centre of the South Island to actually be a bit more self-sufficient with some of those crops as well. So I take your point, and there's some discussions that need to be had, but I think it needs to be wider as well.
I totally agree. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you, gentlemen. Very informative as usual. Cheers.
Do we hang around for the cake? Do we hang around for the birthday cake or not?
Why not?
Thank you.
Someone like to move that, receive and note that report to your worship, Mayor and Councillor Wills. All those in favour? Against? So moved. Thank you. Moving to 7.2, our reports on page 28. And we have vesting of the Temuka Netball Association building. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome councillors and members of the community boards. We received an email, well, Philippa received an email in regards to some issues with the netball building on the Temuka domain, and some of the background and outline is there in the papers with you. To cut a small, big story short, they want to vest the building to us. They can't afford to actually continue with the building. We have reviewed it. We've had a builder out to look at the stability of the building, repairs, maintenance into the future. And we feel it's a great addition to the Temuka domain. It's situated up near the netball courts and very close to, with a nice car park and access to the dog park. And it has toilets that are actually accessible from the outside as well as inside the building. So a great little addition there. And the Netball Association wish to continue to use it. along with another association. So there's demand there for the use of it. It's not a large building, so it's perfect for small community groups, and we feel it would be a great addition to the domain. Anything you want to add?
It also means that we control the aesthetics of the building. If a netball club have to retain ownership and they can't afford to maintain it, we've got a building in one of our prime locations that's going to deteriorate even more. So that would be the concern on the other side.
Yes, they're going to walk away. They can't afford, due to dwindling numbers with their netball group, to continue with insurance, maintenance and their obligations to the ground lease. Literally, it's not very much to us, but they have no fees coming in. And the team have got a little bit older and there hasn't been a lot of new blood coming in underneath. So approached us, gifting to us, and we pick up and continue from there. So.
Yeah, thanks for that, Nicole. Just a couple of questions. Where are those toilets? We talked about the Avery having toilets. Now we've got toilets at the netball pavilion. How far apart are they? And why would we need two sets if there's easy access to the pavilion toilets? And with the gifting, have we done it? Has someone been out and made sure the building is up to scratch? Because the maintenance doesn't look too big, and often when these organisations have them and hand them over, there's a large lump sum to get it up to standard.
So I'll allow Philippa to talk to the placement of the toilets and the repairs and the building inspection.
We've had a builder look at the building. So short term, there's not a lot of maintenance to do. There's some painting to do. The toilets, to make them accessible from the outside, we would have to do a wee bit of work, but they might fall under the toilet budget as well. They're a wee bit away from the domain toilets. So I know that there's been submissions about toilets for the domain, so that's a different conversation. So I think we could take over the building. We could offer a nice accessible building to small groups on a regular basis. We could build cupboards as we have in other places so that groups could have their cupboard for their weekly meeting or whatever. So I think it will offer something else to our portfolio in Temuka.
So the Avery is closer to the swimming pool and that area. Then this little netball building is right on the other side by the playing field. So it's quite a distance away and away from the playground area. Yes.
Quite a distance. The toilets are 200 metres away. Why would we build another city? 100 metres away across the site.
And what Bill Steen said during the LCP last week was that Avery rebuild the 350. If there was a need for toilets, that would be in addition there too.
Yes.
Right? And I think with what we've got here, that need for extra toilets is not
Investigated. Yeah.
That's all I'm asking.
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Piddington, you pretty much captured what I wanted to discuss as well. First of all, we're talking about the fact that there's about $3,000 to $5,000 annually that may be spent on upgrade, etc. With the current building in its way it is now, there's no need or improvements required immediately. You know, roofing, electrical work, kitchens, any of those areas, they're 100% up to spec.
Yeah, the roof, through Mr. Chair, the roof, perhaps in 10 or 15 years' time, will need something. The kitchen's fine. Like I say, one toilet block we'd probably shut, but apart from some painting, it's not too bad.
And then you're starting to talk about some renovations made up of fit. The other association that's interested, who else is expressing an interest?
At this stage, Alyssa, we haven't actually put out, this is the first time it's gone public in regards to the use of, and we will put that with the local library. So we have two definite groups that want to use it, and until we actually put the word out amongst the community, it's up for open hire as per our other halls.
So would we be required then to spend some money trying to upgrade it to a certain standard to meet the requirements of these other associations?
No, that's not our intent.
Your intention?
It's not a large building. It is quite a small wooden building, quite hold comfortably a group of 30. And so we're not talking about a very large hall. It is a smaller, almost like a large room with a kitchen facility and toilets. So it's actually quite a nice addition without it being a very large hall.
So with them being so financially sort of, I suppose, in the hole a wee bit, will they be in a position to be able to pay any sort of rental and the hire into the hall? Will they be in that position to be able to pay that ongoing?
That,
Do you have
well,
any sort of
that-
contractual
it would be
agreements?
on a use by, and so they did request for reduced fees for use of if they vested. But we felt that hire of a hall is very nominal anyway. And if it's on an hourly basis, that we felt that they could comfortably afford to be able to pay that amount of money without reducing it.
So with the toilets there at the moment, what sort of repair are they in? And with the access, are they open? What sort of hours for members of the public to be able to access externally?
One lot, there's two lots of toilets, I presume historically they would have perhaps been men's and ladies. So one lot is fine, the other lot needs some work, so we would decide what we're going to do, and I think they're the ones that they would like to open from the outside, so we would make them only accessible 24/7 from the outside, not the inside.
So do we know any sort of costings around to upgrade the toilets, to make them fit for purpose?
Not really, not, I haven't got, I couldn't give you a figure what it would cost. It would just depend what the community want.
If I could cut in, councillor, 1 July, we're in a new financial year, Vic has control of the public toilets budget, what talk about is R&M, here's the maintenance, and we can just prioritise that as required.
I suppose where I'm driving with this is just the fact that we talked about $300,000 being spent on an Avery in Temuka. Are we better off maybe looking at it and going, could we build them a more modern facility that's 24/7 access for the community to be able to get public toilets in around that vicinity? Maybe some sort of budget. That's, yeah, and we've got it up there for some discussion. I'm just thinking, because I can see that's going to be another cost for us later on down the track.
No.
Sorry, with respect, the ladies have done a great job in assessing the building. They've come up with, yes, we can invest it, at not a big cost for us in terms of our budgets, but that we shouldn't then also discount the hire fee.
Yeah.
Right, so the same, stick with there, stick with the normal hire fee, and it just becomes, a 1% of our building stock.
That's good. I suppose just driving around where I'm actually trying to get to is how many other halls have we got within our district, possibly that our wards may say we cannot financially manage these anymore and have to hand them over to council. Have we got any other on the stock, on the books that we've got concerns around? That's where I'm driving.
Yeah.
The answer is no, right? But you never know where organisations are coming from.
Yeah, we were in a situation with this particular building that they were going to walk away, uninsure it and walk away and leave it in the middle of the domain, which was not really the best outcome. And when we went and visited, walked around, had the building inspection done, we found that it would be an opportunity for a small room on hire within a lovely location in the domain with the opportunity of an outdoor toilet. We don't have to spend the money and create that outdoor toilet. But what it does do, it's got a nice car park around it, and it's very, very close to the parking area and therefore access to the dog park. It becomes an additional facility, which adds some opportunity.
Great. Look, that's in the answer to all my questions. I'm quite happy to move the recommendations as well.
Oh, it's me first. Sorry, I'm right today. Look, the history and Paddy can speak to it as well, but I know Diane Lynn from the Net Board given us a big lead up to this as far as them trying to do the best by the sport out there and the building and get to where they need to be. And I think they've considered a lot of options. And partly, I think this is the decline of netball out in Temuka, based on it all being played in one location. So, that's the reality. And we might pick up some things over time because of the changes in that. But I'm happy to support all three as well. And although there might be an opportunity around the toilets in this vicinity, it's a discussion outside of these recommendations as well. So happy to second that if you've already moved those. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, thank you for your support. It's just the reasons why has become vacant, and that is centralisation of sport. And great amenity we've got in town, but all our players come into town. So, and that's just part of what sport has done within smaller communities. So, and we were left with this quite good building that was donated to them by it was the old golf pavilion in Temuka, and it was donated to these organisations. And coming from about the toilets, is we have got lots of activities going on now, the dog park and disc golf going on down at in the Torreville at the end of our domain, and there's no toilet facilities down there. So it was just an idea that we'd put to Philippa that we opened one door up, so had access through the day. So you know, it's, if we let it go, as it's been pointed out, we'd end up with a vandalised, all the visitors that come into our town vandalising all our buildings, so it wouldn't have come from our locals. So I just, you know, thank you for support, and just Matt, thank you.
Well, look, just as an ex-Temuka,
Oh,
I used to play tennis, and that was a critical part of the Saturday afternoon's tennis, as well as it was also utilised in the morning by the juniors, and then obviously in the winter it's netball. So it's actually, I mean, it's where you go and you take your plate and you take your thermos and you use the toilet, and you've got the, you know, just some services. It's actually quite an important part. So I'm keen to see it carry on.
Thank you. It is a lovely building.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of questions. Trying to flag really for Barbara. Currently, is it fully accessible? And with the toilets that you're talking about opening up, will there be a fully accessible toilet for anyone that has any disabilities?
If we get the go ahead and you agree, then the outdoor toilet will be an accessible toilet for use by all persons. So accessibility first, and then used by able-bodied as well.
And the current entry into the building?
At this stage, no, there are steps, but it will be something we'd have to do to actually get access.
So it won't be expensive to do.
Right.
So that would be one thing we would do quite soon and quite easily.
I know you've had the building built through, but just regarding insulation and heating, that there are things that don't need to be updated initially.
It depends what the long-term use ends up being.
Right.
It's a traditional old wooden building, so you would assume that there is no insulation in it, but any repair works that we do in the future that open any of the walls, we would actually make those additions and those extras at that time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Look, the committee board, I think, asked just about all the questions that we've asked here today, and you know, they were diligent in looking at, you know, the process and taking it through, and that's great that we're all on the same page and asking the same questions. That's the way it should be. But the committee will firmly come up, as the chair would say, with the proposed being a good idea. And we were nervous, like you all are. What are we taking on? Because we've been caught before, but it seems as if it's fine. It's another little add-on in the domain, and hopefully it won't be too expensive to maintain it all. The loo one can be discussed, I'm sure, in the future, whether you know, get there or not. But in the meantime, it's a matter of securing it, and so I certainly support doing just that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We have to move on a second. Those in favour? Those against?
Thank you.
Very true.
So moving along, 7.3, progress report, Field Royal and Heritage Facility Development and Social Housing Ventilation Compliance Projects on page 7.
So, Chair, this is a continuation of the reporting process that we put in place for this financial year. And what we may need to do is content, and we'll take the first one being the Field Royal and Heritage.
So again, thank you through the chair. obviously taking the report as read, and it's the regular monthly update. We have our next PSG meeting tomorrow, and there'll be some updates. The only thing to note at this stage will be the starting point of the Army Hall demolition, and around because the diggers via Rooney's were due, who were awarded the contract. We're obviously due to start on the 17th of June, but they've been diverted onto our roads, etc. So I'll get an update later on this afternoon in regards to that date, but we're expecting possibly a week out of play, but then we'll be underway. So that's a 3-month program. So rest assured that is now about to happen. We have all of the seats out of the theatre. You'll have noticed that some of them have already been uplifted and taken away to Geraldine Cinema and various schools and the South Drama League group. And we've had some individuals and some in the room that have obviously uplifted 1 or 2 for posterity. And we have quite a number left over, so we're going to do another push, and hopefully need to speak with our comms team that we can do another Facebook and see if we can get rid of another 100 or so. So there'll be some more available on Thursday, and after that, anything that's left over, we will pull apart and take up to Redruth, and they'll be gotten rid of appropriately. Then we're actually ready to go. So a lot of work happening. It's moving along. We are, as per the overall time, a couple of months behind, but that has been consistent. So we haven't fallen backwards since then. And we're working on bringing that timeline this next 6 months so that we have boots on the ground for January, February of 22 as per the actual program. So we're looking to actually condense our time in this next 6 months. Any questions?
The timeline keeps on drifting out on this project, and I just wonder about the project managers on this and also the architects, and whether you're getting timely feedback. And I noted that we had an update and the project manager didn't even show up.
No, and we are having, again, commercially sensitive at this stage, but happy to speak. We are having some discussions with our project managers, and I will be following up with the architects because there are some issues around delivery, and I will be taking that up, and it's already underway.
Okay, well, just non-performance cannot be tolerated.
No, and it's not.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion with respect to that project? Move on to the inflation.
Well, eventually, sorry, I was going to allow Pip to talk to that because it's basically her program.
Okay, so I
supported by
wasn't
myself.
sure. No, it's going well. Obviously, as all the other projects, we've been held up with supply, and then of course reprogramming the contractors. But we're nearly at the end, and the money that we hoped had surplus, we've already started getting all the flats inspected for Healthy Homes, which is quite a task in itself. So we're well underway with that. So I'm really quite pleased with how it's going, and so are the tenants. So.
One not so much question, comment. I think there's probably an opportunity in this one around social housing, but also community facilities as far as earthquake strengthening, and that for the elected members to have a bit of knowledge of where some of these assets are, and so perhaps I suggest that as a workshop, we in one afternoon we do a tour and just have a look at some of these halls, just location of some of the social housing, etc., just so we can have better understanding, because there's lots of options that we might be able to do moving forward. So I think just having some visual of these would be of benefit.
If I may, through the chair, the earthquake strengthening program sits within our department, and I've been working alongside of Philippa since Paula Ryan resigned to look at our building stock. So first and foremost, we were looking at the property unit properties But we have been working with the Community and Facilities Department. So we've been looking at STEC and the South Canterbury Museum. We've also been looking at this building and various other halls. At this stage, I haven't brought any more buildings into line, but I've been working with Stratex and with WSP and various others to look at a DSA program. So we have funds that have been made available in this next LTP and some that we've had to pay for MBS ratings, like Geraldine's, and there's another one that is underway at this stage. What I want to do once we've got an indication of each of the buildings, but we also bring in the emergency response buildings, your civil defence, because there could be substantial millions of dollars to bring the allocated buildings up to spec. So we need to have a discussion as part of that, where they sit, and then appropriately put some spend towards the buildings that we do need to bring up to over 35 or then up and over to 30 at 67. During that DSA, I also get an indication of an asset management plan. And my goal is to then take each of the buildings on a journey via a structured asset management plan that's linked to if they're under 34, above 34, the use of the building, and then up to 37. So there's quite a few linkages around the actual property stock that needs to happen. So it's a program that I've started to sort of begin, but it needs quite a good framework around it, and then take the whole stock on a journey.
So we can start that process by, as you suggested, your worship, by bringing a site to it.
Conveniently to a guide to my right.
Just as part of that, Nicole, I'd also like to see usage, because you frightened me when we said spend millions of dollars. I want to make sure before we go and start strengthening anything that it is of value to the community. And just, you're talking about civil defence.
So it's like our STEC building, the Temuka Stadium, all allocated buildings in emergency and civil response. So there's an expectation of 100%. And I would have to allow the Environment Department to speak to that and Lamorna to come forward and so we've begun those discussions, because identifying the buildings that are on the list to be used for civil defence, and this building is one of them. For that, it would have to be 100%. So what does 100% look like? It's over and above the usage. So there's different formulas in regards to this. And if you were to take this entire building to 100%, your figures could be quite high. So what are the alternatives? This is about thinking about a new strategy and thinking about how you can take your civil defence and your emergency response into a more mobile situation. So a lift and shift. So it's all for discussion. I'm just throwing these things at the table, but yeah.
Just on that though, hopefully this afternoon we've got an opportunity to build a new stadium. Wouldn't we be better to ensure that was 100%? Than retrospectively do the events centre, and therefore I would suggest in timing we need to do that quite quickly.
So all your new buildings should be built to 100% going forward.
Correct. So
an IL4, but built to the use of the building. So if you identify it for civil defence, then you build it accordingly with your K bracing, etc., and all of those ability to exit the building. And if it's not going to be of a civil defence, then what is its use? What are the numbers for use of the building? And therefore it has a certain percentage. But anything new, you should always go to 100%. Yeah. But there are changes coming in legislation around earthquake building that the country will become zoned. So what is a certain percentage requirement, say in Christchurch or Dunedin, which is actually going to be quite high, we sit in the middle and we could be less of a risk. So there's a lot of work going on within the structural engineering community, talking to legislation around changes. So it's another factor to bring in.
So just in terms of furthering this, where we've gone a little track.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. It is actually very important, and it's probably something that we will get a paper on, and we'll talk about it before we start, unless you're talking about ventilation.
No.
So,
An honest man. An honest man.
I thought you were gonna hint. Anyway, so any further discussion in relation to these reports? And not trying to minimize that at all, it's
No.
very important, and we do need that, so good discussion, thank you. So receiving those reports. And sorry. Yeah, and pass the test. Thank you, and councillor Oliver, all those in favour? Against, so moved.
thank you. Thank you.
Very patient with us. But
Hi, I'm sitting in for Lily DeWage, who's just having had a new baby. So yeah, we're getting near the end of the financial year, obviously, for the capital work program, and at this stage we're looking at a predicted spend of 57.6. And so this is actually, a significant increase on last year of 32.71, and and greater than the previous year as well. So yeah, just take any questions that you might have on that.
and that 57 was written before we had the flooding. And so, we've got a few issues at the moment. There's some projects have been put on pause while we're doing the response and recovery. But we'll report it in the financial, but in any event, we're going to have a good result.
Any discussion? Councillor Booth?
I think Mr. Harper's probably said it. So we're on target to spend everything we thought we're going to spend in this financial year.
As of the 28th of May, yes, but we're still in the recovery phase and we'll be in that phase for months. But for example, there's a project in I saw it this morning, Washington Road. They couldn't work all last week, but they're back on site today. The production has a pipeline, won't be what it was, but we're well on track with that project. So I'm not expecting it to be 57 because of this month, but we're certainly going well.
And sorry, Ash, my second question is budget reforecast and actuals. And then that graph sort of tails into three different options between 61 million and 53. What does the reforecast mean? And actuals seem to be below the reforecast. So can you just explain that graph to me?
Yeah, reforecast is our project manager's best estimate of our end of year outturn, whereas the orange is as at the 30th of April, and that is money spent. And so you've got to, you've heard me this say this many times, you've got to reconcile when you're reporting compared to when you are reporting progress against work on the ground compared to money paid to contractors. And there's always 1 to 2 months lag in there, and that's just the way contractors training and we pay. And so the forecast is, and reforecast means that that's the most recent one. We did a forecast back in January for the budgets. This supersedes that because we had during mid-May the activity managers and project managers reforecast. So this is including some of that information, and then year to date is end of April. So that's the financials, and that's 2 months to spend up.
Yep.
Well, I'm trying to find what I'd like to talk about here, but it's not here. The Argentine Art Gallery and the strengthening of the building. We put a fence around it about a year ago. It's been shut since 2017. It's not on here.
It's on that board there.
Yeah, but haven't we approved it doing actually strengthening the building?
Is that progress has been made on that? We're aware that there have been consultants, not sure if their status have been appointed or are being appointed. There has work been going on, but it is this is the top 15 projects here. It doesn't feature in the top 15, so therefore we haven't reported on it specifically. But we can make sure there's an update. There will be an update at the end of the year, which is the end of this month. On all projects, because I've got to come through the annual report.
All right, thank you.
So I'd like to see note that report.